Attorneys, it's not an easy profession, but it's a very rewarding one.
You need to meet people in person. There's a difference between meeting somebody in person and meeting somebody online.
I really started to focus on the business of law.
You have to be comfortable with yourself and your knowledge. You have to like yourself. You have to be comfortable. You have to be confident. Because if you don't like yourself, nobody else is going to like you, right? Welcome back to From Underdog to Entrepreneur Building Dreams. I'm Pat Miller, your host, president of Blue Diamond Construction here in New Jersey. It's my goal each week to bring you entrepreneurs and career-oriented guests onto my show to talk about their journey and hopefully share some advice and their story to help anybody along the way who's looking to either be in their industry or if breaking out as an entrepreneur themselves. Hopefully you'll inspire some people. Today, I'm happy to have a friend of mine, Damian Conforti. Damian is a partner in the law firm, Mandelbaum, Barrett, PC, attorneys at law. He has over 20 years experience in a vast array of legal areas. As a former prosecutor, he brings a unique perspective to advising corporate clients, right? I know that. So I'm one of his clients. So he's consistently named on the annual list of super lawyers and best lawyers in America. He gives his clients a multitude of advice on legal issues. I'm very grateful to have him as my counsel, and it's awesome stuff today. I appreciate you coming on. Welcome.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm very grateful to be here. Happy to be here with you. As I just said to you before we
Yeah.
logged on, I'd want to do this with no one other than you. You're so dynamic, and I enjoy seeing what you put out there, both personally and your book and everything you're doing professionally. Very excited for you. So I'm very happy to be here.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me coming from you because you've built yourself quite a successful career, and that's my show's not just about entrepreneurs. It's about anyone who's built their lives and their careers from coming from an underdog. And I know we go back to talking during our business chats, and we have a lot of similar mindset, right, Damien? So I like to go back to the beginning of your journey, if you don't mind sharing with the audience. On I know you're a Sparta boy, right? So you
Yeah.
put yourself through college, right? So tell
Yeah.
the audience your story about how you wound up becoming a partner in a very well-known law firm.
Sure. So my story does start in Sparta
Yeah.
many, many years ago. I'm not going to say how many, but it's been a while. And it starts with really my father, who was the Superior Court judge in Sussex and Morris County, and Sparta is obviously in Sussex County,
Mhm.
for just under 40 years.
Wow.
And he served in that role from a very young age, one of the youngest ever to be a judge in the state of New Jersey, and then went on to be one of the longest tenured judges in the state of New Jersey, and was in that role even up until the time that he was retired. You're allowed to come back for a certain period of time to the bench after retiring on what's known as recall, and then when he passed away, he was still on recall. But
Wow.
at that point was sort of a turning point, if you will, an inflection point in my career, because he, as you might imagine, being this larger than life figure in my life and in the community, I always sort of had a guiding light, right? And
That's
I
good.
knew, you know, which way to go, how to make decisions. Didn't always follow his advice, and I was pretty clear about that. And it didn't really work out the way the way that I would have liked when I didn't do that. But I was a bit rebellious and didn't take his advice, and went off the path many times that he allowed me to do. That was like a big thing in our family. Dad was this larger than life judge and father figure, but he allowed us to make our own mistakes. He was not somebody who was, as it might seem odd, authoritarian, even though he was on the bench and judging people's lives and major decisions, making major decisions that impacted their lives on a daily basis. He didn't really sort of ascribe to that as a father. He wanted
Right.
us to
He
go
didn't bring
out.
his job home. He didn't bring it
Yeah.
home.
And
Yep.
he wanted us to go out and kind of like learn our own way. Right. So I get to this point just a couple of years ago where I lose him. And now it's like, well, what do I do now? In
Right.
the practice of law, and personally as well. I mean, obviously he was a mentor and a father figure in how
Right.
I, tried to raise my family. And I have 3 kids and a very active my wife is very active in their lives and we're very active in their lives. So I look to him for that kind of guidance as well too. So it was at that point that, I really started to focus on the business of law,
Okay.
and that was a significant transition for me rather than, as you mentioned in the opening, serving as a prosecutor and then a criminal defense attorney. Now I focus more on the corporate side and the business side. And those were things that were foreign to me. And it was almost like relearning how to practice law as someone who's sensitive to the needs of someone like you, a CEO, an owner, a manager with
Right.
operational needs on a daily basis, as well as legal needs. A lot of my clients, I like to think like yourself, look to me for the things that they're dealing with on a daily basis, but also the things that they may not think of.
Yeah.
And it's a more of an entrepreneurial mindset that you have to have in order to counsel entrepreneurs. And I always say to people like yourself, you're the business person, I'm the lawyer. I'm here to offer advice and counsel. You're here to make the decisions, and you'll do what you will do with your business. But in order to fit in that role and provide any sort of value, you have to know the business as well as you have to know the law.
It's true. So you actually had 2 careers, right? You had a career as an attorney, and now you have it as an attorney, counsel, business side, right? It's
That's one
kind of
way
a
to look at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have that, though. I mean, we talk about this on my show all the time. So you wanted to make a change, and you changed your mindset on how to fill a different position, right? You're still good at what you do. You're still a great attorney. You still know the law, but now you're dealing with a little bit different clientele, right? You're not dealing with, defense being a defense attorney, and you kind of changed your mind a little bit to fit into the new. I think you have a new career. You're more of an entrepreneur now. That's my
Yeah, it's
opinion.
it's certainly one way to look at it. And there are 2 facets to it. One is what I try to bring to the table for my clients, as again you mentioned in the opening, is using that litigation experience
Yeah.
to approach problem solving and dispute resolution from early on. I think is key because I can extrapolate out and tell my clients what to expect. If things were to go, as we say, the nuclear option, and you wind up in litigation. And two, I have this collection of great partners at Mandelbaum Barrett, and we run a firm, we run a business, and the business of the practice of law is a tough one. Every business is difficult, has difficult decisions, has many demands, as you know. So we have to juggle that, something they don't teach you in law school, with also, being in a position to advise your clients and use your skill set there.
Yeah. I mean, I always drive that home on every show I do. A lot of kids aren't cut out to be. I call them kids, right? My kids are in their late 30s, but a lot of these younger 20 somethings, not everybody's cut out to do 4 years of school. It's just the way it is. But I always advise you should at least take accounting and business administration so you know the practice. You're going to have to know money, right? So I always advise that they take classes at night or whatever. You sounds like you had a very humble beginning with your father. And I applaud him for that because my son just became a parent, like, he just had a baby. And I told him the hardest thing you're going to do as a parent is watching your children make mistakes and not say anything because you have to allow them to experience life on their own terms and make the mistakes. And I always say we're all products of our experiences,
That's
whether
right.
they're mistakes or they're positive, experiences. And it's important. Not everybody should just be handed the answers. That's what I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you
And then
should
you can
learn
undo
them.
it.
Yeah.
You you
Otherwise,
you as
we
and
kind of
you'll
have a
now
lot of that,
your
don't
role
we?
is shifted as
Yep.
a grandma, right? So he's going to try to let them make mistakes, or at least let the first one make a mistake. And congrats again to you on
Thank
being a new
you. Yeah,
grandma.
she's
But
so cute. Yeah.
um yeah, and then you're going to spoil her, and then you're going to undo all his hard work. But
That's my
no,
job, though.
it's a much better role to be in these
It
days.
is a much better role to be in because most people who know me, my late husband was a worker. He was a provider. He would work 2 shifts. He was always working. I raised my boys. So, and I used to tell them, I'm raising men. You're going to be a parent and you're going to be a husband someday. I'm not here to be your friend. It's just how it was. I was a tough mom, but, I think I did a good job on that. I checked that box. They're good men. So, but I want to talk to you about being an underdog. We talked about this already. Do you say you get up every day and you feel like you're still an underdog or no?
I do. Somebody mentioned it to me, and I may have heard it before, this idea of the imposter syndrome, right? That
Yep.
you wake up every morning, and not everybody has it, and
No.
maybe it's not a great trait to have, but I feel that I do, where you feel like you're starting from zero and you have to prove yourself all over again. And in some ways it's a good thing. In some ways you have to be good to yourself, right? And not
Yeah.
beat yourself up too much. But in the practice of law, it can very much feel like a what have you done for me lately type profession. Um, every client is just as important. Every issue that every one of those important clients has is critical to them. And
That's
that's
right.
why they're
Yeah.
calling you. And that's why they're paying you a fee to take care of it. And so you have to be on your game at all times, and you have to be ready to meet the challenges of the day. And for whatever reason, when I think about that, um, I think I've always got to do better, right? And sometimes I
Yeah.
do. I
You're hard
do.
on yourself. Yep.
You make mistakes, right? And maybe that's it's being hard on yourself. And not that I, am any particularly harder on myself than others. The people that I work with, I think we all the successful attorneys that I've tried to model myself after, like my father, they all sort of have that same feeling or mentality, right? They don't show up at the at the store every morning thinking, yesterday's work was done. We closed the registers, and we can sort of sit back on our laurels. Um, Attorneys, for the most part, I'd say the overwhelming majority, they're very, very intelligent people. They work
Yeah.
really hard. It's not an easy profession, but it's a very rewarding one. And just the ability to mix and mingle with these people on a daily basis is one of the most fascinating parts about being an attorney. And especially when you wake up every morning thinking, man, I got to get this done today, and I got to do better than I did yesterday. And then you walk into this collaborative environment where you're talking to people who think of things, the critical analysis of legal issues, and they think of things differently than the way that you're thinking about it. That's the really inspiring and I think the real meat and potatoes of the practice of law, the ability to do that every day with your colleagues. And I always say to my kids, my job is tough. You have to want to do it. You have to, as you mentioned, go to law school after college, pay the money to go to law school,
Yeah. It's
come
not
out
cheap.
and work your way up. It's it's a tough way to make a living, but it's never boring. It's
No.
never.
So your job is like working with the public. You just have a variety of different personalities. Come on. And I think you as an attorney you have to be a little bit of a therapist. No, a little bit. You got you gotta
There are times. There
yeah,
are
there's
definitely
times you
times.
gotta talk them off the ledge a little bit, right, Damien?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can
That's
tell.
part of it.
Look,
That's
even
part of
my
it.
interaction with you and other attorneys in your firm, I can tell that you guys all do your homework. You're all very eloquent with the law. You're very professional. And I appreciate that because, I've been in business a long time. I've had a lot of attorneys over the years. And I really I like the way you guys handle the accounts. I really do. Um, you get to the point, you figure it out. You always hope for the best, but you always keep, like you said earlier, this could possibly happen. You have to keep people informed the reality of the other side because you've been a prosecutor, so you know that flip side. You've been there, and that's a good thing to have. That's a
Yeah.
good, that's a good counsel to have. Somebody who knows both sides, who's been in the ring, and has been on both sides. So I think you're right. It's not an easy profession. It's like mine, but what you have that I don't have, right, is you have a lot of other attorneys that you can talk to, right? You got a lot of talent there. So,
Yeah,
if you
we do, and we're fortunate to have that,
yeah,
and not every attorney practices that way, and it's a lot more onus on them, and it makes it even more of a challenge. But I think that however you practice, whether you are working for the government or you're at a bigger firm like I am, or you're a solo practitioner, the key to is having a good relationship with a client and to keeping a relationship with a client. And I'm happy to hear the things that you just said about working with
yeah,
me
you
and my
guys are
firm.
good. Yep,
And the key to that is you have to manage expectations. um I always say to clients, the one thing that I never want to hear, because I've failed you or put you in a position where you're saying it to me, is, Damien, you didn't tell me that was going to happen.
right, right.
That, I think, is the greatest disservice you can do to a client. Um, you have to lay out what the possibilities and probabilities are. You're always going to work to do the best that you can,
Of
but if
course.
you don't explain it to the client ahead of time, you can't have a client be surprised. That's sort of in a nutshell what I mean by that. And
Right. No, I think that's fair. I think, but you talk about doing your client's best service. It's very similar mindset that I have. I think you know this. That was what makes me different than other. There's 100 other people standing behind me that'll frame buildings, right? You have to have a client relationship. I build clients, relationships with my clients. You have to make yourself stand above your competition, and that is
absolutely.
your entrepreneur mindset of the legal part of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're
I mean, we're old enough to know, remember the yellow pages, and you could go down that contractor section, right, and flip for days.
yeah,
You could do the same with attorney, right? And everybody's description sounds better than the one below it, because you'd get the yellow pages at the end of the year and you'd say, oh, well, that guy or that lady is describing
yeah,
themselves this, so I'm going to add this adjective, or make the description even better, or offer
yeah,
this in my listing. And now, it's 10 times that with the internet and social media, and how people do business and how people find their professionals, and their service providers. They don't even have to go looking for them. It's in their face, nonstop. um I'm sure right now, if any listener were to put in, you know um who's the best contractor to handle a framing job in Monmouth County,
right.
right? Not only are they going to get a million results on that Google search, but then all of a sudden, whatever social media platforms they're on, they're going to start hearing from and seeing all of
Yep,
the advertisements, what we used to call advertisements, but all of the posts and the blogs and
it's
whatever
true. Yep,
feeds that they follow. And so, it's got to make it difficult for people to make decisions about a service provider, because you're inundated
It
with
is.
material.
It's so overwhelming for everybody. You're right. Years ago, everybody fought to have an A in their name, right? Because Yellow Pages, you want to be listed first. So
Right.
you got to have an A in the name, right?
Right.
A great
But
attorney.
yeah,
So,
yeah, there you
oh, yeah, I
go.
want this guy, like my cousin
Yeah.
Vinny. I want
Yeah.
him. So,
But
but
if you go back to then and now, right?
yeah,
It all sort of comes back to, so there was a whole bunch of listings you could pick from. Now you're inundated and it's thrown in your face the moment you pick up your phone. There's one thing that's irreplaceable, and that's the recommendation or a referral of a friend or someone that you trust. Because I
that's
know
right.
that's the first thing I do when I need something done in my house is, you know, I don't even bother looking at my social media feeds. It's, my wife and I will talk about, Nicole and I will talk about, well, I think so and so just did that in their house. Let's call them. Or do we know anybody, in the family who may have dealt with this issue, or something like that? And if you can be on the tip of that person's tongue who gets that call, that's gold. That's worth everything. That's worth,
That's
10
actually how I run
pages
my
in the
business.
yellow book, yellow
Yeah, I
pages.
run my business by I'm mostly referral. I've just
I
I'm at
know.
the point in my career, most of my, people call me up, they call me for, advertising, and I just don't do it. There's no need to do it because when you do a good job and you create the relationships and you're accessible like you guys are, same as me, and you're attentive to your clients' needs, you'll sell yourself, right?
That's right. That's right. And
So it's
then,
a beautiful
it'll
thing.
just keep happening and snowball from there.
Yeah, and I tell everybody starting out all the time, you have to be comfortable with yourself and your knowledge. And if you have to like yourself, you have to be comfortable, you have to be confident because if you don't like yourself, nobody else is going to like you, right? You
Yeah,
have to sell yourself. You're selling yourself first because you're the face of the company, and then you're selling your services. I get that a lot, especially in my industry, you know? People wanna people wanna work with you and they know that you have the knowledge and the expertise and the attention to detail and the client's best interest in mind. So that's really, really good advice right now. I say it all the time, you know, figure out what you want to do, what you enjoy doing. If you have to go to school like you did, go to school. There's so many resources out there right now. And like you said, it's the best time to be an entrepreneur, but it's also difficult because there's so much information. Sometimes that could be a double-edged sword because you're dealing with that many more people on the internet that you have to compete against, right? So I built my business the old-fashioned way. I did it, sweat equity, and you do a good job and you get referrals. Like you said, find somebody who just did a kitchen and refer that. And then, they told two friends, as they say, and then it goes back. But I want to get back to your dad, right? Because it sounds like you emulated to be like him. He was someone that you strive to be like him, no? He's
yeah,
your mentor, right?
absolutely. Yeah, in multiple ways, as I mentioned, professionally and personally.
Yeah,
Um, First of all, one of, if not the smartest person I ever met.
I know.
Um, my dad was incredibly well read, which is another art form that, I don't know if you call it an art form, but just something that people aren't doing anymore, right? I heard somebody the other day say, if you want to hide, you know, uh, something, or make it so no one's heard about it, put it in a book,
Oh, I
because
know.
nobody opens books. But um, whatever you do to always be learning and expanding your horizons, and really knowing your craft, as you mentioned, you have to be yourself, and know what you do cold. You've got to know it inside and out. And that's a big part about being an attorney, and something that I learned from my dad. You have to be an expert in your chosen area.
That's
Um,
right.
and
Yep.
for attorneys, I think attorneys need to have at least two or three different practice areas that they really know cold, and are up on, and are active, and constantly wrestling with. And I mentioned before, analyzing of issues. My father was fantastic at that. And I think that's critical to human development and certainly your development as an attorney. And so, knowing your craft is right up there with, being out there and, accessible to the public and being on social media feeds and,
Yeah.
sort of promoting yourself. It's great once you get that door open and that entree to,
Yeah.
whoever it is that you want to speak to. Now the spotlight's on, right? The hot light is on you. Can you deliver what you say you're there to talk about or do? So, that was, I think, one of like the cornerstones of what I learned from my father. And he was also a great listener. Which does not work well in the social media era. You've got to be out there talking and constantly putting yourself um, out for, public consumption. But when it comes time, when you get the call or you're in the room and you're talking to a new client or you're evaluating an issue, you've got to listen. You've got to understand. No one wants to sit here and listen to me explain a breach of contract action or a tort action, right? That's for me to know and figure out. What they want to
True.
hear is, how does that apply to my problem? How are you going to fix my problem? Fantastic. You know what you're talking about, Conforti. At least we hope you do. But what does it mean for me? And how are you gonna resolve the problem? So in the law, we talk about it as applying the facts to the law.
Right.
Something else that my father was incredibly gifted at and worked hard at. He could analyze an issue in like the snap of your fingers. So
I'm sure he rubbed off on you.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So, I
but
mean, that's
it's
that's I
it's
always
it's
talk
those
about my dad
things,
too. My dad had an 8th grade education and talk about reading. He taught himself. He was self-taught by reading encyclopedias. There was no internet. He was born in the 20s. He had
right?
to quit school to feed his family because it was the war, and my dad was one of the smartest people, Damien. I mean, he was so smart. And I still think that fast forwards to current times, the more well-read you are, the smarter you're gonna be. Data is your friend. Get informed, check your sources. Don't listen to everything you read. Check and
Yeah,
make sure you get 1, 2, 3. Just read. Like I say all the time, I'm dating myself. I used to read 4 newspapers a day,
yeah,
before 8 o'clock in the morning. That was just me. I liked information. I like to cross-check
right.
information. I think it's a lost art. I think you're right. Um, I do think that people do read a lot, but different types of reading, right? They
Well,
read, you know, more
absolutely.
yeah, more escapism, right? And they listen to the books more. A lot of people I know listen to the books when they're driving, where
Yeah,
everybody's busy, nobody has the time or, you know, it's really it's a luxury to have enough time to sit and read a book. I
yeah.
talk to some people, they're like, I'm on my 10th book this year. I'm like, my God, I'm slacking. It's like, it's
Hey,
like, where
where are they finding the time?
where are they finding the time? Because I'm busy like you, and it's like, and I applaud them for finding the time. Maybe they just don't have a busy life like me and you, but I think you're right. I think you get a lot from data. You got to read. You got to be well read. You know,
Yeah, and how you consume is different now, and that's fine. But as long as you do it, we talk about being in the social media era, and it's also the soundbite era, right? And I think too many times people just the soundbite that plays well on an Instagram post or an X feed, you know, is not really always the story of what actually happened, right? Sometimes you
right?
learn more by reading the comments on whatever post you're looking at. So, and my father was the same way. He actually read 4 newspapers every morning, and
Yeah,
you don't have to do that now, and not everybody has the time to do that. But the what's fascinating and is the reason why you don't have to do that now is it's at your fingertips where we all walk around with this giant computer that's been compacted into the size of a phone, and you can get all of that information at your fingertips, which we obviously know. But I think it presents, as you mentioned before, the younger generation, and maybe they don't have that inner drive to wake up every morning and sort of do everything that they have to do to pay the rent and be 100% every moment of every day. I don't know. I think that this generation, whatever you want to call them, whatever moniker you want to give them, it really has a chance to be greater than the greatest generation
I
because
agree.
of
I
access.
agree. They're so smart and they have so many resources. They just have to channel their energy in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a
There's a lot of
great
bad
time.
information out there too, Damien.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're inundated, right? And we have to, as parents, we have to sort of play a role in that. But they are so well informed. They know
They
so
are.
much more, and they have so much at their fingertips than we did. And it's only going to lead to them being more intelligent and more informed as they grow and join the profession. So I think in particular, there there really is no greater time, in my view, to become an attorney because you can really do it in a way that, number one, you're incredibly informed and you can learn the law um, in any different way that suits you. People learn differently
Yeah.
depending on, we know so
I'm a
much more about how
visual.
the brain
Yeah.
works and
Yep.
how their personality dictates how they absorb material and how they're able to repeat it. So that's one thing. The second is, and you sort of touched on this before as well, I think there's not a ton doing it, right? There's not a ton of kids who are out there pressing the flesh and making the connections on a daily basis that you've done and you have to do to sustain and grow a business, right? So there's tremendous opportunity because there's a vacuum of of a lack of people in this newest generation who are motivated to out there and be social. We have social media, but we don't have socially driven or socially talented people to go out and sell themselves and sell their business and run companies. AI is all the rage, and AI is going to, I agree, transform the way we do a lot of things. But AI is not going to sit across, well, maybe the robot will, but they're not going to sit across the table from a potential customer or client and hear their needs and be able to deal with them the way they want to be dealt with, unless you're somebody that just wants to be, fully automated and not talk to
Yeah,
anyone.
but they
So
still need to have communication skills, and I think that's the biggest thing lacking nowadays. There's a lot of really, really smart younger kids, okay? I
absolutely.
had one of them on my podcast, I'm gonna be airing it. He started his business at 17 with
Wow.
$100 from his unemployment check during COVID. He's East Waves, big surfing apparel. He's in 100 stores now. He's 27. This kid's driven. He is
Yeah.
driven. He gets out there. He has pop-ups. He communicates. I keep telling everybody, you have to I always say, just give me Damien, I always say to everybody when I'm meeting a new client, I said, just give me 1 hour with them and they'll do business with me. You need to meet people in person. You have to be able to communicate. There's a difference between meeting somebody in person and meeting somebody online. I'm sorry,
Yes.
but it is. You have to be able to speak with them. They get your body language, they know your knowledge, they see your eyes, your movement, they know you're genuine. It's just a different take on how to do business, and getting out there and pounding the pavement and working with people and letting them see you in person is really, really important. And I can't drive
Absolutely.
that home enough. Communication is where, like, they're so smart, but they need to step it up in the communication department. They're great at writing an email, they're great at texting, right? But you need to get out and you need to talk and you need to be in person. People wanna meet you, right? Anybody could be a name on an email. I met some people on site yesterday. They were like, "Wow, it's really nice to meet you." You know, glad I'm glad we
As
had this
strange as that is.
right. Is I'm glad we had this conversation in person. They flew in from California, right? They
Right.
didn't know me. I deal with people all over the country with franchises. I've done business with people for 25 years and they've never met me in person. And then when they come out and they meet you, I mean, Zoom is doing a better job now with that. You get to see people on the camera, but I think they need to learn communications is so critical. And a lot of the kids now, I think they're a little bit taken back with being social. It's called social media, but they're not social. Does that make sense to you? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have three kids myself. They're older now, getting into the college years and in the college years, and
Right.
um, it's you really, as I said before, you have to stay on top of their social media use,
Oh, yeah.
and then make sure that they are being social at the same time, um, because those are life skills. They're also relationship skills that they're going to benefit from and in their daily life outside of business. Personally, I've had this conversation with my wife Nicole the other day that I really hope for our kids that they're going to have be in a loving relationship
Right.
and have found the right person. And
I
my
agree.
concern is, how do you do that if you're not out there and about and socializing, in an appropriate way, meaning, have a conversation that lasts more than 30 seconds. Um,
Right.
you know, you,
You
you
don't
don't
even
just
know if they're
meet
real
someone.
anymore online, right?
Yeah. And
Like, there's
even
so
if
many
they do,
different
and the other thing that sort of baffles me is once they do meet someone online, or they snap them and get snapped back, and then they meet and maybe they meet for coffee or whatever, or meet at a party, and then you know months go by, and
Oh,
maybe
I
they
know.
never
It's so
meet that
different.
person again, because you can go right back into the phone and just go back to snapping or texting or whatever.
Yeah,
And so
that's
that's not how you develop healthy relationships. And
no.
so we're big proponents of that you've got to be out and about and mixing and mingling with your friends, and being exposed to different people, different cultures, and learning about how to communicate with different people. I agree with you 100%.
It's gonna springboard you into your entrepreneurial journey or your career. I mean,
Absolutely.
not everybody wants to own their own company. I mean, it's not easy, but
Yeah,
you could still be an entrepreneur like yourself and be a part of a team of, in a corporate world. It's still a business. You got to have the mindset. And let's face it, if you didn't have people skills, you wouldn't be a very good attorney, right? You got to
that's
have
right.
people skills. So, I hope that they learn, but there are a lot of kids figuring it out, and they're making really good money in their 20s. I think they got to stay away from the instant gratification. And this is just my advice out there. You still have to work. You got to work hard and you will receive the benefits of your hard work. I can
Yeah,
guarantee you that. And I don't
there,
like to
there's
guarantee much. I guarantee you that if you keep working and all of a sudden it'll come together and you'll be like, all right, this is good. I did
there, there
something. I'm starting to
there's
see
no
the fruits.
substitute for it.
Yeah, you have to be willing. It's not for the faint of the heart, and you have to be willing to put long hours in, but the rewards are great. I mean, what's your rewards? I say it all the time. We had this conversation. Everybody spends their money differently. Some people like cars, some people like houses, yachts, whatever, but you will be able to, you know, reward yourself someday for your hard work, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, I think that's really important for the next generation that are listening. And I know I have a lot of younger kids that listen to me, and I'm happy to help all of them. I've helped quite a few, and I hope they listen to that. Get out there, start going to networking, go to events, pop up events, go even car shows, talk to people, get out there, meet people. There's nothing better than networking with business people. I
I
love
think
it.
I think you just have to show the younger generation your cars, and they'll see what they, can obtain
Rum
and
rum.
aspire to.
Yeah, right? Well, you know me. I'm the same girl driving my pickup as I am driving my sports cars.
I know.
That's just my thing. That's what I like. That's how I relax. There's
Yeah,
nothing
good for
better than
you.
driving a fast sports car through the farms at sunset. That's how I relax. You got to find your escape, right? And it's a
Yes.
good thing. So, getting back to your career, did you hit any speed bumps? I mean, did it all go well? You went to college, you made it big? What, nothing? You must have
Well,
learned something.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
And it goes back to what we were talking about before. I feel like every morning is a speed bump for me, but
true.
it's and that's part of the practice of law, right? This is not something for the faint of heart.
Right,
You have to enjoy in some ways handling conflict. As strange as that sounds, but you know,
it's what it
people
is.
don't come it's almost everything, right? They don't come to us to and pay us for us to tell them how great things are and how well they're doing, right? So there's a problem, there's an issue, or there's something that they need to accomplish. They want to buy a company, they want to buy real estate.
Right.
They need to navigate their way through a business relationship with a vendor or partner that has not gone well for whatever reason. And so,
Right here.
um, I see you raising your hand, but
Yeah,
you
well, I
know,
mean, that's why you're
you
my counsel, right? Look,
you
nothing's
right, and
perfect.
you have to be comfortable dealing with problems. And so you mentioned speed bumps. I mean, there's no crystal ball. Nobody knows how it's going to
No.
go. But as I said before, managing expectations and laying out the problems for the client and what the likelihoods and probabilities are ahead of time as best as you can. Know the industry, know your client, know what is likely to happen. Try to know the other side, which
Yeah,
is critical to predicting where things are going to go.
yeah,
And then there's going to be speed bumps, but your ability to adapt and deal with it, right? Too many times when conflict does arise in the course of a case or representation of a client, they're um, maybe members of the younger generation, maybe members of an older generation or my generation. It's almost like I don't want to deal with that. Well, no, that's what you're being paid to do. You're being paid to deal with that, and you have to
right.
embrace it, and you have to want to deal with it. Um, you know, speed bumps for my career, as I mentioned before, my
Every day.
father and my mother too. Very much proponents of letting us fall on our face and find our own way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've fallen down many times, more than I care to recall or think
Yeah,
about.
but here's what I this is you know my story. So this is what I hang my hat on. That you need to learn to turn adversity into power. All right? It is should be if y- you're going to have shit happen to you, right? In your life, in your career, and you have to turn that into power to rebuild. It's going to happen. You're going to have setbacks. You know, a lot of really, really wealthy businessmen have filed bankruptcy 3 times. You have to take that setback and use it for power and turn that adversity into, a positive. You got to turn a negative into a positive. You got to use pain as fuel. I did. You
Yeah,
know, I was
yeah.
grieving. I had to use it for fuel. I kicked into survival mode and I used it. So it's not really, what happens to you. It's how you react to what happens to you, you
I,
know?
I I agree, and I think the only thing I would add to that is what you learn from it. And
Right.
you can choose to make the same mistake or fumble the same way. You're going to make additional mistakes. You're going to lose again. But if you if you don't take away something from the losses to put into you know positive efforts going forward, well then it's a failure. But if you lose, if you fall down, if you make the same mistake but you make it a different way, you got to keep going at it. and
Yeah, it's
and
gonna keep happening. you
It's going
know.
to keep happening, and you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to embrace it, and utilize what you learn to try to do better, and you will do better, but you won't always do the best, right?
Well, I
It's
always say
a
that, Damien. I'm like, "Okay, what did this teach me? Okay, I'll never do that
yeah.
again."
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, business is a lot like there's a saying in golf, it's a game of good misses, right? There are very few perfect shots, and I think that applies to business as well. It's one good miss after another. You just try to miss a little bit, closer to the hole than you did last time,
It's
and
true.
then
Because
sometimes it leads to knocking it out of the park and a hole in one, and that's great, but that's not, there's a reason those are rare occurrences, and that's not going to be the norm. So being able to shift and pivot and deal with adversity and
gotta
deal with
pivot.
conflict, and have the social skills to be out there and try to get out ahead of it, is critical. The other thing too is, surrounding yourself with good people.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
it's a saying, it's something that, seems obvious, but it's not easy to attain. My biggest supporter, and the person I turn to now, who, almost as much of a partner as she is a mentor in some ways, but just a fascinating mind, and I love obviously dealing with her, is my wife Nicole. I mean, the things that we talk about on a daily basis. Sometimes I hang up the phone or walk away from a conversation and sort of recognize how dumb I am, because to be able to exchange ideas with somebody that you trust, who is a good person,
That's a
and who
gift.
is a life partner, is another thing, is great, who you love, but to be able to get that kind of feedback, and learn from that kind of feedback is just invaluable. And um, one thing I hope for, you know, this entire generation, specifically my children, is that they find that. There's just no substitute for it. And you need it. You need it on a daily basis.
Yeah,
And
I think
whoever that is for you.
yeah, I think the kids have been driven misguided on a multitude of levels, you know? They think that marriage is antiquated and you could be alone, and look, you can be alone. You know, now that you get older, I feel the same way. My one son's married, my other one's not, and it's like you only wished for your kids to find what you had, you know, and life is better shared. And it's even better when you have somebody to have an intelligent conversation with, who you trust their mind and to bounce it off of you, because it's so essential to have someone like that. And I think they've been lied to on a couple levels, right? That they're never going to be anything unless you go to college, and you have to go to college as an attorney. You have to go to college if you wanna be a doctor, and that's great, but I think kids get hard down on themselves when they've been driven. In my generation, if you didn't go to college, you were worthless, right? The next generation of millionaires is gonna be plumbers and electricians, I'll tell you that, because I'm finding them hard to come by for the next gen. There's a lot of us that are gonna be retiring. There's a lot of opportunity. A good plumber
Right.
can make 300 grand a year. Easy. Easy. I'm telling you. So, I hope they kinda sift through the information, because there's been a lot of misguidance to the younger generation. I think marriage is very essential in my opinion. I know that they've been told that it's antiquated and you could stay, and you can stay single forever. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's nice. A sunset's better watched with 2 sets of eyes, in my opinion. You know, you can only share so much on social media. You know, certain things are private and experiences, and that is the thread of who you are, right?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, ties into a lot of the themes that we've discussed, and
yeah,
it requires hard work, right? And
yeah,
social media, if
true.
it's terrible for one thing, it's terrible for portraying this ideal of
Yeah,
whatever it is that you're watching, right? This is not the norm, right? A lot of what's out there is, it's been curated to look perfect,
yep,
and kids are watching players, perform in a particular sport or put a particular feat in their sport on their social media feed, and it's like the most extreme example, and thinking, well, my God, I could never do that. I could never hit a ball that far, or I could never make that shot, or score
Yeah.
that goal. So, kind of what's the point? I'll just scroll to the next one and I'll sit here on the couch and I'll continue to just do this because it's easier. Well, there's no perfection, right? There's no escaping hard work. And the same goes for relationships, whether you
Right.
have partners at a law firm, partners in a construction business, or
Yeah.
your life
It's all
partner.
relationships. Yep.
It takes work, and it takes hard work sometimes. And like we
Well,
talked about, you're gonna fumble,
yeah,
and
you're
you,
gonna.
you
And
gotta you gotta
it,
continue to work at it. You don't just scroll to the next
yeah, that's
image
what they
or
do. They
the
keep
the
it's
next
the
reel.
path of least resistance, right? Somebody doesn't, I'll get rid of you. It's next, 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 next.
Yeah.
And it does take effort. It does take time. And some of the best relationships are built on communication. I said that before, and that's who stays married the longest, right? Respect, communication. You have to talk to each other. It's very important. And that's the same thing in business, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
You have to have communication. You have to talk to people. You have to, I deal in an industry where I have 12 different trades going on under one roof right now. And it's like you got to talk to each other. You can't
Good
just
for
sit in the
you.
room, but you can't just sit in the room by yourself and do your own thing. It's like,
Right.
oh, I didn't know. I closed up the wall. You got to get in here. Oh, you got to put electric in the wall when you coming in. So it's all part of being able to communicate and, it, they'll learn hopefully. And like you said, we can only wish that the next generation. Look, I think we all are victims of wanting to have our children and offspring to have a better life than us. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be able to allow them, like your dad did, my dad, me. You have to allow them to make the mistakes, to learn from their experiences. And you're right, you have to surround yourself with the right people. And my dad, like I said, he was so smart, Damian. He used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you you, right?
Mm,
Look in the mirror,
that's
show
great.
me your friends. And now they say it a little differently nowadays. They say, show me your friends and I'll show you you in 5 years. I don't think it's going to take that long, right?
Right.
And he also used to teach me, you're going to argue with people. If it's one, it could be you. If it's two or more, it's you. Look in the mirror. And that's an interesting concept that he,
That is a great concept. Yeah,
yeah,
I like that.
because he used to say, if you argue with one, it could be them. If you argue with two or more, it's definitely you. Take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and see what you're doing wrong.
I
And
like that.
that stayed with me. And I try to change the way I do things because he's right, right? If you start arguing with everybody, what's the common denominator? You.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
sure.
unless you're on trial, right? Then you're going to argue with people. But
Well, yeah, there are times where you're the most hated person in the courtroom, but that comes with the territory.
yeah, we had that conversation the other day. I could have been an attorney. Look, anybody out there can do anything they want if they put their mind to it.
There's certainly the opportunity for it now. As you mentioned, your friend and who was also going to be on the podcast, who's
Yeah, he's
17, started a
unbelievable.
business at 17. I mean, that was possible for you and I, and during our generation and how we were raised and what we were exposed to, but it wasn't. It was not. I wouldn't say it's the norm now, but it was really improbable.
It was.
Now it's an open door to do that, right? Whether or not you can pull it off is another thing, but the opportunities are boundless. And if you can be a good communicator, a strong communicator, recognize your weaknesses like your father taught you,
Yes.
you're going to have a leg up because the opportunities they're just they're limitless right now for this generation.
Yeah, and I hope they do it. Yeah, that's almost an hour we're talking. We could talk forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this
So
was
what
good.
is the
Flew
best
by.
advice? I know you probably touched on a few things. I'd like for you to give anybody in the audience The best advice?
Best advice, universal advice for as an attorney or just in general
In
or
general, whatever you wanna share, Damien. I
in
mean,
general? Yeah.
well, I think in career, right? I think
Mhm.
the best advice is I think I know what you're gonna say, you touched on it, but best
I
advice
I would think that, don't be afraid to work hard.
good advice.
Whatever it is, whether you are that type of person that wakes up in the morning and you feel like the the register is at zero and it's you haven't done anything to sort of establish yourself or prove yourself. Don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves
Yeah,
and work at it, right? I think that the other thing that I would say that kind of goes hand in hand with that is take smart chances, take chances.
yeah,
There is opportunity. One thing that I wish if I had to look back and do it differently, I kind of knew my path, but I think I knew my path a little too well. And I think that if there are ways that you can expand your horizons and put yourself outside your comfort zone early on, smart
yes.
decisions, not reckless ones, but things that you find intellectually stimulating but challenging, and you don't feel like, well, I don't know that I'm 100% comfortable at it. Go do it. Go do it while you're young, and while
Good
you're
advice.
doing that,
Good advice, because you
recognize
knew where you were going, but you had tunnel
I
vision,
did.
right?
I did, yeah, and
You
I
had
think
blinders
that
on,
yeah, at times, and
you didn't want
that can be
distraction,
helpful.
but there's
That
nothing
can be
wrong with
helpful
that.
when it comes to hard work, so I think it's a combination of working hard, taking chances when they present themselves, the right smart chances, right? And like we talked about, you have a good support system around you. You'll be able to find out what those correct moves are by talking to people around you. Um and not being afraid to work hard at whatever you do. Um and
It's
then
like
I think the
it's like,
last
why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they take a chance? You're gonna wind up where you
exactly.
are now.
Exactly. And then, you know, recognize and the last part of that advice, recognize and embrace your natural talents.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
nothing better,
Nothing
in my
better.
view, when I see my kids excelling at things that they're naturally talented at, and they each have their own, different talents and things that come easy. There's nothing wrong with that. If
Isn't
you
that
if you
amazing?
embrace that and you run with it, your life is going to be that much more fulfilling because you're going to wake up every day happy and motivated to pursue whatever it is you're pursuing. So if something comes natural to you and maybe it's not the coolest or the most accepted thing that you do
Who
or could
cares?
do, it's not socially cool. Um, Run with it because you're never going to be unhappy. You're never going to be disappointed when you wake up every morning and you do something that really, comes natural to you. And if you work hard at that, my gosh, you're off and running.
You're off and running. Like the young kid, I talked to him. He's like, "They used to pick on me, Pat, because I wasn't going at bar A." He goes, "I stayed home on my laptop. I was building my dream." I said,
Yeah,
"Good for you, man."
he's
He goes,
smart. I
"Now
spent
they
a
all
little
wanna
too
work."
much time in bar
Yeah.
A.
He said, "Now they all wanna work for me." I
Yeah.
started laughing. I said, "Good for you. Isn't that something?"
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So he embraced it. That's terrific.
Yeah, he did, and I'm really proud of him. You know, I really like that kid. He's got a bright future, man. He's a hard worker, and I teach all the younger kids. You know, like when my late husband joined the union, they said, "Your uncle's in here. Here's your card." He said, "I don't want the card. I want to be paired up with the oldest guy on the crew." And he learned from the oldest person because at the end of the day, if you get the union book handed to you, you're not going to know the craft, are you?
Mm.
And he
That's
learned,
interesting. That's like your dad.
Yeah.
how he learned and
Learned
became
from the
as
best
smart as
of
he
the
was.
best, and these kids need to talk to the older generation, talk to people. I love talking to people in their 80s. I do. I always look at their hands and I'm like, what's the story behind that life, right?
Right.
It's just everybody's got a story to tell, and it's just so interesting to talk to people. We're all different, but we're
Yep.
pretty similar, right? Um, but where can everybody find you? We're at the end of our chat. You're on LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn, we are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, where are
Okay.
we? We're on all the face chats, and so um y- we're accessible. We put out a lot of content on the hospitality and corporate side.
Oh, good.
Um, so if there are specific needs, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to take the time, like you just said, to
Yep.
communicate, get to learn someone, and let them know if we'd be a good fit for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I know you're very accessible, Damien, and I appreciate that. My girls are going to have all the summary on the bottom of this episode where that
Okay.
people can reach out to you and your firm. So, anybody listening, Damien is top notch if you need anybody for counsel. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thank you.
And talk about
I
getting out of
enjoyed
your
it. I'm
talk about
honored.
getting out of your comfort zone. We got to buy that jet, right? I got to crowd fund for the
Yeah,
jet.
it's on the list. It's a little bit further down on my, wake up every morning and here's what I got to get done list, but it's there. It's
That's
there.
okay. I'll do all the legwork. I'll call you.
I, Listen, that's fine with me. You do the legwork. I'll just keep doing the work on finding whatever, millions we need to do that.
That's
And
okay. Well,
I'll let you know once I've got
yeah,
that
you know
squirreled
a lot of
away.
people. I know a lot of people. People that we know a lot of people.
Yeah,
It's funny, right? It's
yeah.
amazing though when brilliant minds get together, great things are done.
Yep, that's true.
So,
Well, I enjoyed this immensely.
yeah.
I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Damien.
you asking me.
I'm gonna sign off. Hold on, I want to talk to you after this. So tune in next week. I'm gonna have another great entrepreneur on my show to talk about their journey through their entrepreneurship. And in the meantime, if I can do it, so can you. I'm just a girl from Jersey. Thank you.